So my name is Juliana. My pronouns is she, her.
My name is Mako and I use he, him, his pronouns.
My full name is Spencer. My pronouns are he, him.
My name is Rocky. My pronouns are they, he, she.
My name is Zoe. My pronouns are she, her.
My name is Savvy. I go by she, they, and also it to people who I trust.
My gender is such a unique experience to myself. Exploring gender for me started with not necessarily feeling connected to being a woman or being a man. When I started to learn more about a non-binary identity and realize that I don't have to pick either end of the spectrum, and I can just exist in this fun little middle space or a space completely off the spectrum.
I'm non-binary. I like presenting very feminine. The way that I fit into social constructs tends to be a little loose, I suppose. I don't find myself in situations both professionally and socially that are very rigid in any kind of binary fashion. I felt very distant from ideas of gender for a lot of my life. I like to make a lot of jokes about how when I was a kid, people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said I wanted to be a Komodo dragon, which, looking back on it, makes a lot of sense.
I guess I'm kind of like the textbook definition of a trans man. I've always known from a young age that I was different than all the other kids in my class. I never had the words to explain what the feeling was. It's not really normal for kids to think to themselves, oh, if I could just, if there was a button I could press that made me born as a boy and everyone else around me just has the same memories of me, but I was just a boy the whole time. I never really thought, it never occurred to me that not all the other kids are thinking that.
My existence is real, and whether or not you approve of it doesn't particularly matter, because I'm a human being and I deserve respect. Everyone wants respect. We just want to exist in our own identities.
There are certain things that I feel that I have to do as a trans femme person. If I want to be seen as feminine or womanly, that a lot of cis women that I know and have observed don't need to do. I can't just put on jeans and a t-shirt and a pair of sneakers and put my hair back in a ponytail and call it a day, because people will use any factor either subconsciously or consciously, and they will misgender me. There's a lack of respect, and it can be frustrating.
When people use they, their pronouns, it is a sign that they respect me, respect my identity, and that they cherish me for who I am. I definitely need to get better at telling people that I use they, them pronouns, because it's still kind of a struggle for me.
I use she and they pronouns because they feel good to hear in reference to myself. They make me feel like me.
I use he, him pronouns because that's what makes me feel most comfortable with myself.
Again, I don't really care what people call me. I do kind of have a preference for each of the three. Actually in descending order, they, them, he, him, she, her. I actually like it when people use them interchangeably. My only thing about she, her pronouns is I don't like it when people use them too often, and they, them is my favorite.
I'll just let them assume I go by she, her. I don't particularly have any preference with any of the pronouns. I'm really fine with whatever. A lot of people aren't into neo-pronouns. They just don't get it. I know other people who go by it's at least 3 other people. Sometimes it's fun to just be on the edges, expanding what gender means.
We live in a scary world, and I fear judgment. I'm scared that I'll be ostracized or viewed differently, or that somebody's political beliefs will not align with who I am, and that those beliefs will get in the way of respect. If I have an opportunity to introduce myself in a new class, I will immediately say, my name's Mako, I'm 19, I am trans, I use he, him pronouns. Like, I disclose it immediately because I know that if I don't, I'm going to regret it, and then I'm going to have to deal with all of this, like, misgendering crap.
It feels more like I'm holding my identity to myself until I'm ready to share it with others. I guess in that sense, I sort of justify, like, well, if you misgender me, it's because you didn't deserve to know me.
There was a meeting with Phi Theta Kappa. I was definitely the most oddball person there by a long shot. I still said she, they, rather than she, they, it, because I knew people would only discredit me more if they knew that I was extra different in their opinion.
I think that if we as a culture can get to a point where using multiple different preferred pronouns for the same person is easy and normalized, that will be incredibly beneficial for a substantially ignored group of people.
If I ask someone their pronouns and then they're kind of like, oh, I'm a dude or something like that, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. My name's Rocky, and I don't really mention mine because I don't really want backlash. At some point, I kind of have to get over that because, that's who I am. Those are my pronouns. But at the same time, I don't want to put myself in danger or conflict.
My family, my extended family, and even my immediate family, they don't use my preferred name or my pronouns. I have to switch into this completely other person, and completely negate parts of my life that don't exist.
As somebody who has been maliciously misgendered, it can be stressful even when it's accidental. My family's been supportive, but they still struggle with pieces of my identity. They misgender me, they dead name me on occasion. They will never really understand, and that's okay, because they are more supportive than I know a lot of my peers' parents are.
It feels gross. Just gross. It makes me upset that people don't take the opportunity to educate themselves and think about these things and make assumptions about me.
When it's people that may not necessarily know about that identity and they just kind of referring to me as she, her all the time because they think I'm a girl, that can be a little hurtful. Some of my friends, especially my friends that are trans, queer, things like that, and they are very strict about their own pronouns and how people refer to them. They're very, very respectful of mine.
It's been difficult at work and school at times. It is frustrating. I put in a lot of work, both in my presentation and how I carry myself and how I interact with people, to make it clear that I am not a man. But it's not the occasional misgenderings that are frustrating. It's the consistency of it.
Every time I got misgendered, it was grating, and it's just this constant thing. If someone perceives me in a way that's not a girl, that's one of the worst things, because there's so many elements of identity, but gender is such a basic one.
I mainly was misgendered by other students in high school, or I was just misgendered not in bad faith. I think a lot of people think that as soon as you misgender someone, they think that you're being mean and evil to them. But I think a lot of the times it's obvious whenever someone is misgendering me and they're just I messed up and sorry. Those two things are very different.
I'd like to see professors include their pronouns on their syllabus in their introduction. If they go around the classroom at the beginning of the semester and they want their students to introduce themselves, ask them to use their pronouns.
They should be responsible for their own education on the topic, and not put it on the students. It's just being aware of the assumptions that you tend to make, being aware of your biases about what a certain gender should look like, and then doing research into queerness.
When you introduce yourself, I feel like it's pretty big to say, this is my name, these are my pronouns. But when someone introduces me, like themselves to me that way, it kind of gives a friendlier approach even.
Everybody just shared their pronouns and didn't make a big fuss about it all the time, and like, oh, if you have pronouns, you're part of the LGBTQ community. Like, that's obviously not true. So everyone has pronouns.
Generally being familiar with like what being trans is and like why this matters.
I think a lot of people overcompensate whenever they misgender someone and they make it a really big deal. That is the opposite of helpful, because it just starts making the transgender person feel like, oh man, I'm such a burden to you and I'm bothering you so much with asking you to make this change for me. And I think it's better to just leave it as like, he, I'm sorry, and then move on.
I feel like the normalization of queerness, queer history, queer people in just any setting can get rid of that conversation.
I think a lot of people, I like to say, go on autopilot and just sort of, their brains fill in the blanks. And that happens more often than I would like it to happen. And I'd like to see people putting in a more conscious effort on a regular basis to be accepting of queer individuals in whatever space they're interacting with them.